The morning sun, usually welcomed with open arms and bright smiles by the residents of Willow Creek, seemed to cast a somber shadow over the quiet street. For those who knew him, Billy Thompson was synonymous with sunshine, that a perpetual grin seemed permanently etched on his face. His laughter echoing through the neighborhood as he chased after stray balls or helped Mrs. Gable with her groceries. He was, quite simply, the embodiment of childhood joy. That is, until this morning. Gone was the cheerful skip in his step, replaced by a desperate sprint. The laughter was silenced, swallowed by heart-wrenching sobs that tore through the still morning air. Instead of waving a friendly hello, his small hands were clenched into fists, wiping furiously at the torrent of tears streaming down his face. His bright blue eyes, usually sparkling with mischief and curiosity, were now red and swollen, reflecting a pain far beyond his years. He was headed, at full speed, towards the familiar yellow school bus that waited patiently at the corner. The sight of Billy in such distress was jarring, a stark contrast to the boy everyone knew and loved. What could have possibly extinguished the light in young Billy's eyes and replaced it with such profound sorrow? The question hung heavy in the air, a silent plea for answers that would soon shatter the morning's fragile peace. The scene unfolding was a quintessential suburban tableau. Lawns meticulously manicured, sprinklers hissing their morning greetings, and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee wafting from open windows. Minivans, engines humming impatiently, lined the streets, their drivers juggling coffee cups and last-minute instructions to children spilling out onto the sidewalks. That it was a symphony of normalcy. A carefully orchestrated routine played out every weekday morning in Willow Creek. Sarah, in her bright pink backpack, chatted animatedly with Mark about the upcoming science test. Mr. Henderson, ever punctual, power-walked to the train station, briefcase swinging in rhythm with his strides. Mrs. Davison waved goodbye to her daughter, a thermos of soup clutched in her hand. Life in Willow Creek was predictable, comfortable, and reassuringly ordinary. This very ordinariness served only to amplify the unsettling sight of Billy's distress. His raw emotion cut through the placid surface of the morning like a jagged knife. That it was a discordant note in a familiar melody, a jarring reminder that even in the most idyllic settings, heartbreak and pain can unexpectedly intrude, shattering the illusion of perfect tranquility. The contrast between the expected calm and Billy's visible anguish heightened the sense of unease, drawing all eyes to the small figure racing towards the yellow bus. Behind the wheel of the big yellow school bus sat Mr. Peterson, a fixture in the Willow Creek community. His face, etched with the map of a life well lived, was framed by a neatly trimmed gray beard. He was a man of routine, his days measured by the stops on his route, the faces of the children he transported, and the reassuring rhythm of the engine beneath him. More than just a driver, Mr. Peterson was a confidant, a listener, and a gentle guardian to the children of Willow Creek. He knew each of them by name, remembered their birthdays, and always had a kind word or a silly joke ready. That he greeted every child with a warm smile and a genuine interest in their lives. He understood the importance of a safe and supportive environment, making his bus a haven for young minds. His mornings always began the same way. A thorough check of the bus, a quick chat with the crossing guard, and then the welcoming of the first child on board. He took pride in his job, viewing it as more than just a means to an end. That he saw it as an opportunity to make a positive impact on the lives of the children he served, one ride at a time. Today, however, his routine was about to be disrupted. That Mr. Peterson, glancing in his rearview mirror, noticed the small figure hurtling towards the bus. That it was Billy, but a Billy he barely recognized. The boy's usual carefree gait was replaced by a frantic, almost desperate sprint. His small arms pumped wildly as he propelled himself forward, his face contorted in a mask of anguish. Tears streamed relentlessly down Billy's cheeks, leaving wet tracks on his already tear-stained face. Each sob seemed to rack his entire body, making his small frame tremble with the force of his distress. He stumbled once, nearly falling, but quickly recovered, driven by an unseen urgency. Inside the bus, the boisterous chatter of the children abruptly ceased. All eyes were fixed on Billy, their faces mirroring a growing concern. Whispers rippled through the bus as the children tried to decipher the cause of Billy's obvious pain. Sarah and Mark, who had been discussing science just moments before, exchanged worried glances. Even the usually rambunctious twins, Tom and Tim, fell silent, their playful banter replaced by a shared apprehension and a palpable sense of unease settled over the bus, the air thick with unspoken questions and a growing sense of dread. Something was terribly wrong that Mr. Peterson's heart clenched as he watched Billy approach. Years of experience with children allowed him to recognize the difference between a scraped knee and genuine heartbreak. This was far more than just a playground squabble. This was a deep, visceral pain radiating from the very core of the boy. He didn't hesitate. Putting the bus in park, he engaged the emergency brake with a decisive click. He then reached for the lever that controlled the bus door. With a gentle whoosh, the doors swung open, revealing Mr. Peterson's face. The warm smile that usually greeted the children was replaced by a deep furrow of concern etched across his brow. His eyes, usually twinkling with amusement, were now filled with worry and a profound sense of empathy. He leaned slightly forward, his gaze fixed on Billy's approaching figure. He could see the boy's tear-streaked face more clearly now, the raw emotion almost palpable. He braced himself, ready to offer whatever comfort and support he could. He knew, instinctively, that whatever Billy was about to say would be difficult, and he wanted to be prepared to listen with an open heart and a steady hand. The air crackled with anticipation, the silence broken only by Billy's ragged sobs. Billy finally reached the open bus door, his small chest heaving with each desperate gasp for air. He leaned against the railing, his legs trembling with exhaustion and emotion. He looked up at Mr. Peterson, his tear-filled eyes pleading for understanding. But words seemed to fail him. He opened his mouth to speak, but only a choked sob escaped. He tried again, his lips moving, but no sound emerged. The weight of whatever he was carrying seemed to press down on him, stealing his voice and leaving him trapped in a silent world of grief. Each failed attempt only amplified his frustration, triggering a fresh wave of tears. The suspense in the bus was now almost unbearable. The children leaned forward in their seats, their faces etched with concern and curiosity. What could possibly be so terrible that it had reduced the usually cheerful Billy to such a state of utter despair? What unspeakable tragedy had befallen him? The air crackled with unspoken questions, the silence punctuated only by Billy's ragged breathing and the faint hum of the bus engine. The answer, whatever it was, hung heavy in the air, poised to shatter the tranquility of the morning. Taking a shaky breath, Billy tried once more. He focused on Mr. Peterson's kind face, searching for the strength to articulate the unspeakable. He swallowed hard, his throat raw with emotion. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, a few broken words tumbled out, fragmented and distorted by his sobs. My. He stammered, his voice barely a whisper. Another sob escaped, threatening to derail his fragile attempt at communication. He squeezed his eyes shut, willing himself to continue. Dog. He paused, unable to utter the words that would confirm their worst fears. The silence stretched, thick and heavy, amplifying the unspoken dread. The children on the bus held their breath, their hearts pounding in their chests. They knew Billy's dog, Buster, a scruffy terrier mix who was as much a fixture at the bus stop as Mr. Peterson himself. Billy managed to choke out, the word catching in his throat. He couldn't finish the sentence. The implication hung heavy in the air, a dark cloud casting a shadow over the bright morning. The unfinished sentence spoke volumes, painting a grim picture in their young minds. The worst was left unsaid, but understood by all. The unspoken words hung in the air, but Mr. Peterson understood perfectly. He knew Buster, the friendly, tail-wagging terrier mix, was a regular fixture at the bus stop, often greeting the children with enthusiastic barks and playful nips at their shoelaces. Buster was more than just a pet. He was a beloved member of the Willow Creek community. That a wave of understanding washed over Mr. Peterson, followed by a profound sense of sympathy. He pictured Buster, his tongue lolling out, happily bounding towards the bus, eager for a morning pat on the head. The thought of something happening to the cheerful dog filled him with a deep sadness. He could only imagine the devastation Billy must be feeling. His heart ached for the little boy, standing before him, his world seemingly shattered. He knew the bond between a child and their pet was a special one. a source of unconditional love and unwavering companionship. To lose that, especially so suddenly, was a pain no child should have to endure. He knew he had to tread carefully, offering comfort and support without minimizing Billy's grief. This was more than just a bad day. This was a moment that would stay with Billy for a long time. Knowing that Billy needed comfort and a safe space to express his grief, Mr. Peterson made a deliberate move. Carefully, he knelt down. Bringing himself to Billy's eye level, It was a simple gesture, but it spoke volumes. It conveyed respect, empathy, and a willingness to connect with Billy on a personal level. "Billy," he said softly, his voice gentle and reassuring. "It's okay. Take your time. I'm here for you." He reached out a hand, offering it not as a demand for contact, but as a silent offer of support. He didn't push Billy to speak, but he gently encouraged him to share what had happened. "Do you want to tell me what's wrong, Billy? It's all right if you don't, but sometimes it helps to talk about it." He chose his words carefully, aware that pushing too hard could be counterproductive. He patiently waited, his gaze unwavering, offering a silent invitation for Billy to unburden himself. He knew that sometimes just having someone listen, without judgment or interruption, was the most powerful form of support. That he hoped that, in time, Billy would feel safe enough to share the full story of what had happened to Buster. Taking a deep, shuddering breath, Billy finally found the strength to speak. The words tumbled out in a rush, punctuated by sobs and gasps for air. He got hit," Billy cried, his voice cracking with pain. "Buster got hit by a car." He paused, overwhelmed by the memory. The image flashed before his eyes. Buster, chasing after a stray squirrel, darting into the street, the screech of tires, and then nothing. The horror of the scene was etched into his mind, playing on repeat like a broken record. It happened right in front of my house," Billy continued, his voice barely audible. "I was just about to leave for the bus stop, and I saw it all." He buried his face in his hands, unable to bear the weight of the memory. The trauma of witnessing such a sudden and violent event was almost too much for him to process. He had not only lost his beloved companion, but had also been forced to witness his tragic end. The combination of grief and trauma was overwhelming. The hushed silence on the bus deepened as Billy's words carried through the air. The children, who had been leaning forward with bated breath, absorbed the devastating news. The shared understanding of the tragedy created a palpable sense of collective grief. Sarah, who had always admired Buster's playful energy, began to cry softly, her hand covering her mouth in disbelief. Mark, usually stoic and reserved, wiped a tear from his eye, remembering the times Buster had chased after his skateboard. Even the rambunctious twins, Tom and Tim, were subdued, their usual playful jostling replaced by a quiet solemnity. The realization that Buster, the friendly dog who greeted them every morning, was gone, was a harsh introduction to the realities of loss and mortality. They understood, on some level, the depth of Billy's pain, having experienced their own smaller losses in the past. The empathy they felt for Billy was raw and genuine, forging a bond of shared sorrow among them. The bus, once a vessel of youthful energy and anticipation, was now a sanctuary of shared grief and quiet reflection. The weight of Billy's loss settled upon them all. That Mr. Peterson knew he had a schedule to keep, but he also knew that this situation transcended routine. He had a responsibility to these children, not just to get them to school on time, but to teach them about empathy, compassion, and the importance of community. He stood up, his movements deliberate and thoughtful. Addressing the children, he spoke in a calm, measured tone. "Kids," he began, "I know we're on a schedule, but sometimes things happen that are more important than being on time." He explained the situation, carefully recounting Billy's story without sensationalizing the tragedy. He emphasized the importance of supporting Billy and his family during this difficult time. "We're going to take a slight detour," he announced. "We're going to take Billy home." He paused, allowing his words to sink in. It's important to show compassion and support each other, especially when someone is hurting. This is a time for us to be a community, to be there for Billy. He knew this decision might cause some inconvenience, but he believed it was the right thing to do. He hoped the parents would understand as the bus deviated from its usual route. A ripple of confusion spread among the parents waiting at the subsequent stops. They checked their watches, their faces etched with a mixture of concern and annoyance. Some were already running late for work, and the unexpected delay threatened to throw their entire day into disarray. The next stop, Mrs. Davison, who always prided herself on punctuality, tapped her foot impatiently. She exchanged worried glances with Mr. Henderson, who was already on his phone, presumably explaining his tardiness to his boss. When the bus finally arrived, several minutes behind schedule, a few parents approached Mr. Peterson with questioning looks. He anticipated their concerns and prepared to explain the situation, but some were already visibly irritated. "Is everything all right, Mr. Peterson?" Mrs. Davison asked, her voice laced with a hint of impatience. "I have a very important meeting this morning." This minor conflict raised the stakes, adding another layer of complexity to the situation. Mr. Peterson's decision, while driven by compassion, was now being challenged by the pressures of everyday life. He would have to navigate this delicate situation carefully, balancing the needs of Billy and his family with the expectations of the other parents. With a sigh, Mr. Peterson addressed the concerned parents, explaining the situation with gentle sincerity. To his relief, most of them softened upon hearing Billy's story, their annoyance replaced by understanding and sympathy. Mrs. Davison, in particular, seemed genuinely moved, offering a quiet apology for her initial impatience. The bus lumbered down the street, a stark contrast to its usual cheerful progress. The atmosphere inside was heavy with unspoken grief. Billy sat quietly, staring out the window, his face pale and drawn. The other children remained subdued, their earlier chatter replaced by a somber silence. As they approached Billy's house, the air grew even heavier. The once familiar street now seemed alien and foreboding. The house itself, usually a beacon of warmth and laughter, appeared shrouded in a veil of sadness. The bright colors of the flower beds seemed muted, the cheerful chirping of the birds strangely out of place. The scene was somber, filled with an unspoken grief that permeated every corner of the neighborhood. Even the sunlight seemed to dim, casting a pall over the house where tragedy had struck. As soon as the bus doors hissed open in front of his house, Billy didn't hesitate. He bolted from his seat and rushed down the steps, his small legs carrying him as fast as they could. He didn't say a word, didn't even glance back at Mr. Peterson or the other children. He was driven by an overwhelming need to be home, to be with his family, to somehow make sense of the tragedy that had unfolded. Mr. Peterson watched him go, his heart heavy with concern. He knew that Billy was heading into a scene of immense grief and uncertainty. That he hoped that Billy's parents were coping well and that they would be able to provide him with the comfort and support he desperately needed. He kept a close eye on Billy as he raced towards the front door, his small figure silhouetted against the backdrop of the house. He wanted to make sure he got inside safely. He felt a deep sense of responsibility for this little boy, a responsibility that extended far beyond simply driving him to school. He was a guardian, a protector, and he desperately hoped that Billy would be okay. Billy burst through the front door, the scene inside confirming his worst fears. His parents were kneeling on the living room floor, their faces etched with worry and sadness. In their arms lay Buster, his small body limp and stilled. He was breathing shallowly, his fur matted with blood. The living room, usually a place of laughter and warmth, was transformed into a makeshift triage center. Towels were spread out on the floor, and a first aid kit lay open. Nearby, Billy's mother was gently stroking Buster's head, whispering soothing words, while his father was carefully examining his injuries. The air was thick with tension and unspoken fear. The family was clearly distraught, their faces reflecting a mixture of grief, worry, and helplessness. They were doing everything they could to comfort Buster and assess the extent of his injuries. But the situation was dire. Billy's arrival only added to the emotional intensity of the scene. The family was united in their love for Buster and their desperate hope for his recovery. The sight was heartbreaking. Leaving the children on the bus, Mr. Peterson approached the open front door, his footsteps slow and deliberate. He could hear the muffled sounds of distress coming from inside, confirming his worst fears. That he paused at the doorway, unsure of how to proceed. Taking a deep breath, he stepped inside, his presence immediately noticed by Billy's parents. They looked up, their faces a mixture of shock and confusion. Before they could speak, Mr. Peterson offered his condolences. "I'm so sorry about Buster," he said, his voice filled with genuine sympathy. I know how much he meant to Billy. He then explained why he had brought Billy home, carefully recounting the events that had unfolded at the bus stop. He emphasized Billy's distress and his need to be with his family during this difficult time. "I hope you understand," he added. "I just felt it was the right thing to do." He waited anxiously for their reaction, hoping they would appreciate his actions. He truly wanted to help. For a moment, Billy's parents were taken aback. They hadn't expected Mr. Peterson to follow Billy home, and they were still reeling from the shock of Buster's accident. But as they listened to Mr. Peterson's explanation, their initial surprise quickly gave way to profound gratitude. "Mr. Peterson," Billy's mother said, her voice thick with emotion, "thank you. Thank you so much for bringing Billy home. That we don't know what we would have done if he had been alone at school today." Billy's father nodded in agreement. "We were so worried about him," he said. "Knowing that he was with you, and that you cared enough to bring him home, means the world to us." They were deeply touched by Mr. Peterson's kindness and understanding. In the midst of their own distress, he had taken the time to consider Billy's emotional well-being, and they were immensely grateful for his thoughtfulness. They thanked him profusely, their words heartfelt and sincere. His actions were a great comfort. From their seats on the bus, the children witnessed the entire exchange between Mr. Peterson and Billy's parents. They saw the relief on the faces of Billy's parents, the gratitude in their eyes, and the genuine warmth of their thank yous. The scene unfolded before them like a living lesson in empathy and community. They understood, perhaps for the first time, the true meaning of compassion and the power of human connection. They saw how a simple act of kindness could make a profound difference in someone's life, offering comfort and support during a time of immense grief. They learned that being a good neighbor meant more than just waving hello. It meant being there for each other, offering a helping hand, and showing empathy in times of need. They realized that even small gestures, like taking a detour to bring a friend home, could have a lasting impact. The experience instilled in them a sense of responsibility and a desire to be more compassionate and understanding individuals. That it was a lesson they would carry with them long after the bus reached the school. Mr. Peterson climbed back onto the bus, the weight of the morning's events settling heavily upon him. He surveyed the children, his heart swelling with a mixture of sadness and pride. The atmosphere on the bus had transformed. The boisterous energy that usually filled the air was replaced by a quiet solemnity. The children were subdued, their faces thoughtful and reflective. They were no longer just kids on their way to school. They were young people grappling with complex emotions and learning valuable lessons about life and loss. They were processing the events of the morning, internalizing the importance of empathy, and understanding the power of community. The silence on the bus was not empty. It was filled with unspoken understanding and shared sorrow. The children were united in their grief for Buster and their support for Billy. They had witnessed firsthand the impact of kindness and compassion, and they were changed by the experience. The journey to school continued, but it was a journey with a new purpose. A journey filled with newfound understanding and a shared commitment to being better, more caring individuals. Mr. Peterson drove the remaining distance to school. His mind replayed the events of the morning. He thought about Billy's tear-streaked face, the hushed silence on the bus, the gratitude in Billy's parents' eyes. He realized that this morning had been about so much more than just getting the children to school on time. He had initially been concerned about the schedule, about the potential complaints from parents, about disrupting his carefully planned routine. But now, those concerns seemed trivial in comparison to the human connection he had fostered and the valuable lessons the children had learned. That he understood that sometimes the most important thing is not sticking to the schedule, but showing compassion, offering support, and being there for others in times of need. He had made a choice to prioritize empathy over efficiency, and he knew he had made the right decision. He felt a sense of satisfaction, knowing that he had not only helped a grieving child, but had also taught a group of young people a lesson they would never forget. The experience reaffirmed his belief in the power of human kindness. That a few days later, as Mr. Peterson pulled up to the bus stop, he noticed a familiar figure standing at the curb. It was Billy. His face was still etched with sadness, but the overwhelming grief that had consumed him was now tempered by a quiet resilience. He walked towards the bus, his steps hesitant but determined. As he approached Mr. Peterson, he held out a small, Handmade card.it was crafted from construction paper and decorated with crayon drawings of a yellow school bus and a scruffy terrier mix. "This is for you, Mr. Peterson," Billy said softly, his voice barely audible. "Thank you for bringing me home." He didn't say anything more, but his eyes conveyed a depth of gratitude that words could not express. The simple act of offering the card was a testament to the bond that had formed between them, a bond forged in the crucible of shared sorrow and mutual respect. Mr. Peterson smiled, his heart overflowing with warmth. He knew this card was more precious than any award or recognition he could ever receive. Carefully, Mr. Peterson opened the card, his eyes scanning the childish handwriting. The message was simple, but it resonated with sincerity and heartfelt gratitude. "Dear Mr. Peterson," it read, "thank you for being so kind to me. It helped a lot." Below the message, Billy had drawn a small heart, but the card contained more than just thanks. In a postscript, Billy had added a small but significant detail. "Buster is getting better. He's still very sore, but the doctor says he will be okay." A wave of relief washed over Mr. Peterson. He had been worried about Buster, wondering if the little dog would pull through. Knowing that Buster was recovering, albeit slowly, brought him immense joy. It was a testament to the resilience of life and the power of hope, even in the face of tragedy. The news also brought closure to the events of that difficult morning, transforming a story of sorrow into a story of healing and recovery. And Mr. Peterson carefully tucked the card into his shirt pocket, close to his heart. He was deeply touched by Billy's gesture. The simple card, with its crayon drawings and heartfelt message, was a powerful reminder of the impact he had made on Billy's life. That he realized that even small acts of kindness, like offering a listening ear or taking a detour to bring a child home, could have a profound and lasting impact. He hadn't set out to be a hero or to change the world. He had simply responded to a child in need, acting with compassion and empathy. But in doing so, he had created a ripple effect of kindness, touching not only Billy's life, but also the lives of the other children on the bus, Billy's parents, and even the parents who had initially been annoyed by the delay. He understood that kindness was contagious, that it could spread from one person to another, creating a more compassionate and caring community. The experience reaffirmed his commitment to being a positive influence in the lives of the children he served, with a renewed sense of purpose. Mr. Peterson continued his bus route, the handmade card a constant reminder of the enduring power of human connection and the importance of empathy in everyday life. That he knew that his job was about more than just driving a bus. It was about nurturing young hearts and minds, fostering a sense of community, and spreading kindness wherever he went. He greeted each child with a warm smile, offering a listening ear and a kind word. He made a conscious effort to be more patient, more understanding, and more compassionate. He carried the lessons he had learned that morning with him, allowing them to shape his interactions and guide his actions. Mr. Peterson was forever changed by the experience. He had witnessed the transformative power of empathy and the profound impact of even the smallest acts of kindness. That he knew that even in the face of tragedy, hope and healing were possible. And he was determined to continue spreading that message, one bus ride at a time, one kind act at a time, one day at a time. The world needed more kindness.